I like JavaScript. You know this. Sure, I don't like all of it, but I like most of it. Even the really janky old stuff has a certain charm to it. There are very few aspects of the language that I actively dislike, but of those, there's one that stands head and shoulders above the rest. The date constructor. I don't much care for the date constructor. Date sucks. It was shamelessly copied off of Java's homework in the car on the way to school, and it got all the same answers wrong, right down to the name at the top of the page. Date doesn't represent a date, it represents a time. Internally, dates are stored as number values called time values. Those are Unix timestamps divided into 1000 milliseconds, which, okay, yes, a time does also necessarily imply a date, sure, but still, date represents a time from which you can infer a date. Gross. Java deprecated their date decades ago, only a few years after JavaScript's date was turned loose on the unsuspecting world. Meanwhile, we've been saddled with this mess ever since. It's wildly inconsistent when it comes to parsing dates, as you've seen so far here. It has no sense of time zones beyond the local one in GMT, which is not ideal where worldwide is right there in the web's name. And speaking of, date only respects the Gregorian calendar model. It wholesale does not understand the concept of daylight savings time, which, I mean, okay, yeah, samesies, but I'm not made of computers, am I, JavaScript? Sorry. Okay, listen, I'm not here to teach you about date. What I am here to do is bury it. Because soon, at long last, we'll have an object to replace the date constructor. Temporal. Well, I say replaces, but we're still stuck with janky old date. Anything this old, with a use case as common as working with any form of date, is a load-bearing part of the platform forever. It's more that the date constructor isn't our only option for working with dates anymore. You real JavaScript sickos might have noticed that I said an object that replaces date, not a constructor. Temporal is not a constructor, and your browser's dev console will tell you the same if you attempt to invoke it as one. Instead, temporal is a namespace object, an ordinary object made up of static properties and methods, and all of those properties reference objects containing properties and methods of their own. But if you're really locked in on the conventions of the language, you'll notice that despite not being a constructor itself, temporal and all of its own properties start with capital letters, something that invariably says this is a constructor and it returns an object. That's because the methods available on temporal all return a temporal object. That isn't the case with the methods provided by the date constructor. They don't return new objects. So here, the variable today represents a reference to the object created when we invoke new date. When we provide the reference value represented by today as an argument to the addDay function, the parameter the date now represents a copy of that reference value. The date is a second reference to the date object meant to represent today's date. When we manipulate that value to determine the date of the following day, we're manipulating the mutable object in memory. Today becomes tomorrow, the falcon has a hard time hearing the falconer, the center starts to look a little iffy vis-a-vis holding, you get it. There are a couple ways to address this, but arguably the most basic solution is to spin up a new instance of date and manipulate then return that. Sure, fine. Works fine. Always has. But with temporals methods, we don't need to manually spin up any new objects. Every one of these methods returns a new temporal object, which is how we're able to chain the add and subtract methods together. The call to add results in a temporal object, on which we call subtract, which results in a new temporal object. After being logged, no other references exist to those objects, so they're made eligible for garbage collection. Nice and tidy. Meanwhile, our original object remains unchanged. So if we were to rewrite that tomorrow today script from earlier using temporal, that's it, complete with formatting, and using a syntax that unmistakably says, add one day to this with no parsing nonsense. JavaScript, I like you just fine. Date, I will see you in hell.